So just last week, on the 14th of August, No Man's Sky released its latest patch, called Beyond. It brings the game up to version 2, and it brings a buttload of improvements. The most notable being stuff like VR support for PC and PlayStation, expanded multiplayer, a new social hub in the space anomaly, improved base building, improved loading times, and you can even ride tame creatures, amongst other things. And since I've got a PlayStation VR setup, I decided to have a go at the VR aspects of the update, as well as have a look at a number of the other improvements, and share my first impressions with you all. Hello fellow gamers, and today I'll be giving you my first impressions on the new Beyond update for No Man's Sky. So here we are, Beyond is now upon us. Now just for a quick proviso, most of my experience with this has been from the first couple of nights since the update came out. Now Hello Games has been releasing a lot of patches for a lot of the bugs that have been raised within Beyond. Now don't be surprised if any of the bugs I've experienced here you don't experience. Oh, now let's see, to start off. Now anyone who's played No Man's Sky is aware of the loading screen, the initial loading screen and title sequence, which shows a whole bunch of stars whizzing past you. This isn't overlooked in VR. You get to experience the whole thing in virtual reality, so you can see all of the stars whizzing past you as you're whisked into a VR space. As usual, dotted around you are labels showing the names of some of the stars that are going past you, with progress indicator underneath showing your loading progress. I thought this was a very nice, subtle way to introduce you to the VR experience. And then you get to deal with the controls. Now when I went through this playthrough, I decided to go the whole hog, and I got out my pair of motion controllers. Now my advice right from the off, get used to the controls and read up on the patch notes, because the patch notes cover all of the important stuff that you need to know in order to play this game in VR. Because when I jumped into this, I knew diddly squat. So the default controls in No Man's Sky has you teleporting yourself from point to point as opposed to freely moving around. And when you're turning, you're also turning at jarring 45-degree angles in both directions. Now, personally, I absolutely hate this, so I had to go into the options and change everything to smooth. So that way I could just move around the way I want to. This is the control style that I would personally recommend for anyone playing in VR. You can move around to your heart's content, and plus it staves off motion sickness. It's a win-win. Though I must say that actually turning seemed very, very sensitive. And of course the game does have sensitivity bars, so you can reduce or increase the sensitivity of any turning whilst you're on foot and whilst you're in your ship. But it didn't seem to make one bit of difference. I'm hoping that Hello Games fixed this in a patch. Now one of the things that you can do in No Man's Sky is catalogue new creatures that you encounter on all these different worlds. Now trying to scan these creatures was difficult to figure out. But it turns out all you have to do is hold your left motion controller up to your ear and press the main button, and it will put you into scanning mode. Getting out your multi-tool works in a similar fashion. You hold your motion controller up to your right ear and you press the button, and it brings it out. Though I really wish I'd learned this sooner, because I started getting attacked by some creatures, and I didn't know how to get my multi-tool out. Oh, that doesn't sound right. Now when I figured out how to wield my multi-tool, I found it a lot easier to take down sentinels in VR. Normally you just aim your sights at your sentinel and just fire when they're in view. The great thing about shooting in VR is that you can just keep on wandering in one direction whilst you're keeping your multi-tool aimed squarely at the sentinel, taking them down. It was definitely a lot easier this way. And I'll say this again, to recap, read up on the controls, read up on the patch notes, and you're going to have a much easier time with this than I did. Now when it comes to the interface in VR, that can be accessed from little light panels that protrude from your gloves. Just hold up one hand and aim your finger on your other hand at the options and pull the trigger to select them. And personally, I thought this was a really clever way of giving you access to your inventory on your ship, in your biosuit, and your gun, for a lot of this. So we can't talk about a VR patch without talking about the graphics. And certainly, they definitely are softer and more pixelated than the standard No Man's Sky. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it was because I was in VR, but some of the effects are a little jarring, such as the water effects on this ocean world. But you know, resolution and softness aside, when you're on a planet and you're seeing its rings pass over the horizon, it was actually quite breathtaking. So yeah, you can expect a downgrade in the graphical performance when you're switching the game to VR. But the important thing is that the frame rate is pretty stable a lot of the time. There was barely any slowdown. And the frame rate is really one of the most important things when you're playing in VR. Now of course in No Man's Sky you're not restricted to one planet, you can just jump in your ship and fly off. Now the controls in the spaceship whilst you're flying in space, personally it didn't take me very long to get used to at all. It might have been because I was using the motion controllers. It felt rather instinctive, so on my left hand side I would place the motion controller down, press the button and push forward in order to accelerate. And the right motion controller I would hold up like a joystick, pull the trigger, and I would use that to control my direction. Now the first time that I jumped into a spaceship and went out into space, I think it was because I had shot down a few sentinels, but I was being tracked by a couple of other ships who wanted to gun me down. And boy, getting into a dogfight is far more thrilling when you're in VR. I'm not sure how else to describe it, it's really quite invigorating. You can see the ships really close up as they whiz past you, or whiz overhead. And of course you can follow them with your head as they fly past you. And just like it was on the ground, I found it a lot easier to take down my enemies using the motion controls and using my VR perspective. Really made Dogfight much more exciting. Now of course in most systems, yes, you've got planets, but you've also got space stations. And one thing I didn't expect is when you're in VR and you're flying towards the space station to dock, the screen fades to black and then comes back again whilst you dock. I'm not sure why it does this. Probably to minimise motion sickness, or to hide something else that they're doing in the background. I don't know. It was at this point I jumped out of my spaceship into the space station and I started exploring. And I must say, my ship, it's not the greatest in the world, but it certainly looked a lot bigger in VR. I went up to the next deck and I had a chat with a number of different species there, and this gave me the opportunity to experience the new language category learning system. So instead of being taught just a random word in their language, you can pick the category of the word. Now at the moment I still don't have too many hours on this, it's closing to about 40 hours on it, so I've still got a lot of words to learn, so it probably doesn't matter for me at this point. But if you've been playing this for 100, 200, 500 hours or more, yeah, that's going to be useful. Now I just want to finish this off quickly by talking about the Anomaly. Now I hadn't played No Man's Sky in a while, so I don't know when the Anomaly was introduced. But I know now that Beyond turns the Anomaly into a social hub. You should be able to find your friends or other players there. So on my very first playthrough, I saw the Anomaly on my interface. So I selected it and boom, there it was in front of me. So I docked in and had a look around. It was at this point that the game constantly was crashing on me. It didn't crash anywhere else, it was only in the Anomaly. Now luckily I was able to capture some of what happened whenever the game froze and crashed on me. At first the game would slow down, it would judder and slow down, and then come to a complete halt. All the sounds are still going in the background, but nothing is moving, but you can still move your head around. And that meant I was able to look around and see what I can only describe as this gaping void all around me. I've got to be honest, it didn't bestow me with a lot of confidence. Whilst I was at the Anomaly as well, I tried talking to people. So the way you talk to other beings in this game in VR is you point your motion controller at them, pull the trigger, and do a kind of pulling motion. You use the same motion to get into your ship as well. but every time I tried to do that, all that would happen was the creature would just light up white in front of me and not say a word. Now, I'm not sure why the Anomaly in particular had a lot of issues for me. It could be down to a number of factors, to be honest. It could even be down to maybe some of the other people who are actually there at the same time. Which, by the way, I did see wandering around, which was rather funny. One of them I could definitely tell was in VR because I could see them teleporting from point to point. I don't think they could see me waving at them though. In the end I decided, since it wasn't crashing anywhere else, and it was crashing a lot here, on the next game load, I'd get the heck out of there. And sure enough, the rest of the game was stable. But again, Hello Games are releasing a lot of minor patches that fix a lot of bugs with Beyond at the moment. So it's very possible that you won't experience this. At least I hope you won't. So all in all, what are my first impressions of No Man's Sky Beyond? Now sure, I didn't touch upon the multiplayer aspect of it, and I didn't touch upon the base building either, both of which have been vastly improved in Beyond. But everything I did experience, especially the VR, I've got to say, is rather good. It's a really immersive experience. Seeing everything from this perspective makes the game feel new again. Everything from mining, attacking enemies, and dogfights, they're all much more intuitive and exhilarating. Now, although, as far as I can tell, there are still a number of issues that need to be taken care of, like the crashing and the graphical fidelity, I would still definitely recommend this for any PSVR owner. I'd definitely recommend you give this a shot. However, I would not recommend this to anyone who's just getting into VR gaming. I would strongly advise that you find your VR legs first before you try this out. And there's even more good news. Hello Games are going to be re-releasing the game in a physical format, complete with all of the updates, including Beyond, next month in September 2019. I personally think this is fantastic. It's a great step towards game preservation, and it should bring in some more cash for Hello Games to support this game further. Now I know, I've already got the special edition, but I know for certain I'll be picking up a copy of that to go alongside my special edition of the game. But anyway, I'm not going to take you away from No Man's Sky any longer. Thank you for watching, and be sure to let me know what you thought of the vid with a like or dislike or comment, and I'll catch you all next time.